Welcome back, America. As we showed you at the top of the show, you have now seen the security footage of Nancy Pelosi's Hollywood-style exit from the Capitol on January 6th. Looks a little bit differently than some of the descriptions, and it raises a lot of security concerns. I want to start off by acknowledging something. There are two people that have made it possible for Just the News, Real America's Voice, Amanda and I, to do this work. One of them, Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and his staff who worked for us to get access and to do this in a responsible way. And our next guest, Congresswoman Marjorie Greene, who has fought relentlessly to give the American public transparency after all of the work of the January 6th committee to keep the American public from having that transparency. We're lucky to have that Congresswoman join us right now. Congresswoman Greene, Marjorie Greene, great to have you on the show today. I want to start with just your reaction of what you've seen. You've looked at a lot of this footage, but let's just start with the speaker. Here is a supposedly a dire moment where the speaker has to be evacuated by the police, and her daughter and the police apparatus are basically allowing a filming of a very secret exit and a very serious moment. Seems to me like a bad choice in security.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so grateful to you for covering this issue and showing the American people the truth of what is really happening and what happened on January 6th. And what you're going to reveal to everyone and what you are revealing is this was a political narrative. Speaker Nancy Pelosi at the time, her biggest concern and responsibility was the safety and security of the Capitol. She ignored all the intelligence briefings that were given to her. She ignored the request for the National Guard on January 6th. And what everyone just saw in this video is they used the situation. They totally threw out the ability to hide exits for security reasons in the Capitol, and they used it. They used that situation to film it so that their family could make millions of dollars later by selling the video footage in a documentary. I believe that is one of the most abusive things and the biggest sign of corruption from Nancy Pelosi that the American people will see thus far. And I know you're going to show them a lot more. But this is appalling, and it shows who the real hypocrites are, and that they had a lot more planned that they were going to do with January 6th than anyone even knew. And while all of us were confused of what was going on that day when the Capitol was breached, had no idea it was going to happen, Nancy Pelosi clearly knew what was going on, and they had a plan the entire time.
Yeah, and Congresswoman, I think when people look at this, they can only come to two conclusions, especially with respect to that specific aspect of Nancy Pelosi's exit from the Capitol, accompanied by her filmmaker daughter. It can really only be one or two things. I think it can only be that she cares more about money and the filmmaking aspect of this more than her safety, or she never thought that there was a safety issue to begin with.
Well, Amanda, I think that's very clear, but the truth is she knew there was a safety issue because Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. The Speaker's duty is the Capitol and its safety and security. Not the president. The president is in charge of the White House. The Speaker of the House is in charge of the Capitol. Nancy Pelosi had been briefed multiple times going back into December. And John, you have reported that repeatedly. But she had been briefed. She knew there were threats of violence that day. She had been told by her own sergeant at arms. She had been told by Capitol Police. She had been told by many agencies. She had been warned of potential violence on January 6th and threats to the Capitol. And she had her daughter there with camera in hand. I think they clearly knew what they were doing, and they have capitalized on it and made millions of dollars.
Congresswoman, I know beyond the transparency that you've been fighting for 2.5 years to give the American people, there's another issue here. Chief Son's going to be coming on in a few moments, and he has said to us repeatedly, Amanda and I, the Capitol is no more safe today than it is on January 5th, that the real security failures of that day really haven't been fixed because Democrats were sweeping them under the rug. When you look at the fact that the security detail was willing to allow Nancy Pelosi's daughter to film her, she could have tripped, fallen, stopped the security from moving quicker. She's recording very sensitive sites, not only here, but all the way to Fort McNair. there are a lot of things that Capitol Police don't seem to have properly owned and fixed. How concerned are you, and what might you be doing to make sure the Capitol Police does a better job protecting the Capitol going forward?
Well, that is a great concern of mine. I mean, they receive millions of dollars and have never replaced the video cameras in the Capitol that they were supposed to replace, and many other things haven't been done. I think the safety and security of the Capitol should be a very serious issue. And I feel the same way about kids in school. I think that we should take safety and security very seriously, not only for politicians here in Washington, but for people all over the country. And that's why it is so important to support our police, give them the right tools and the ability to do it. But if you're not taking the tools and the funding to create better security, then we need to take a look and make sure that that happens. And that's why I'm so thankful for the House Admin Committee here in a Republican-controlled Congress. I'm thankful to Speaker McCarthy because that is something that he's really working on, as well as our entire leadership is. But it's still a concern of mine, and I can tell you that from a personal experience, who has some of the top most death threats of all members of Congress. It is a real issue, and we need to make sure that we take this very seriously and correct any problems.
Great point.
Yeah, I know that's definitely always been an issue for you. I wanted to ask you, on that day, there were absolutely people who broke the law, who trespassed, who committed acts of violence. But there were a lot of people who I think Americans think were unjustly charged and prosecuted, and some of them, a few of them are still being held in jail. Do you have any updated numbers regarding those folks, whose prosecution is moving along, anything like that?
Yeah, this is a tragic situation, and it's heartbreaking. This is something that I've been attacking the FBI, the Department of Justice, the jail, the DC jail here, and other jails. These people are truly being persecuted. And Amanda, you are right. Some of these people on January 6th did commit violence. They did break the law. And of course, they have been charged and prosecuted. But there's a lot of people that have been targeted simply because they walked through the Capitol on January 6th. And this is our real concern with the videotapes. If we release these videotapes just widely for the public, number one, we put the security of the Capitol at risk because there's over 1,700 video cameras. Number two, we also endanger many Americans that were simply standing on the Capitol grounds, maybe never even walked through the Capitol or committed any crimes, but they could have just walked further than where the barrier was simply because the barrier was torn down by the time they got there. Most of these people have never even been to Washington, D.C. until that day on January 6th. So there was no way for them to know that they had crossed a barrier because it was all torn down. There's a big concern because there's George Soros funded groups and many other leftist groups that will sit there and view these videotapes for hours and hours using facial recognition software and dox these people and hand them over to the FBI and the Department of Justice, who we have no control over. And so this could be really endangering more Americans to be targeted by the weaponized government from the Biden regime, and we just don't want that to happen. But right now, we know there's several dozen January 6th defendants still here in the D.C. jail, but there's more January 6th defendants all over the country still awaiting trial. And sadly, Amanda, Matthew Graves, the U.S. attorney here in Washington, D.C., that ignores 67% of the crime here in Washington, D.C., but has weaponized his office at the Department of Justice to purely target these January 6 defendants. He's going to arrest another 1,000 more. So this is a very grave situation, and this is why it's so important that we rein in this out of control weaponized government, because it's truly a threat to American democracy.
Congresswoman, it's a great honor to have worked with you on this, and I want to thank you for your support in getting us the transparency to the American people we're going to now be able to provide. We're going to need you back on real soon, but thanks for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sean. Thanks, Amanda.